They looked like everyone else. Some smiled for cameras, shook hands with neighbors, and even went to church. Behind those familiar faces hid something far darker, monsters who walked among us. For decades, these men and women haunted America's nightmares. They fooled friends, evaded police, and left entire cities afraid to lock their eyes with strangers. Tonight, we're stepping into the shadows of the real people who inspired the world's scariest movies. These are 15 real serial killers who terrified America. Let's start where the mask of normalcy was first shattered. Ted Bundy, the charmer killer. He was handsome, intelligent, and confident. Kind of guy parents hoped their daughters would marry. Ted Bundy used that charm like a weapon. During the mid-1970s, young women began disappearing across multiple states. Bundy often pretended to have a broken arm or asked for help loading his car. Once they were close enough, he struck fast, calculated, merciless. He studied law, attended political rallies, and smiled in interviews while investigators tried to connect the dots. Even during his murder trial, Bundy represented himself, flashing that same confident grin. What chilled America most wasn't just what he did, but how normal he looked doing it. He reminded everyone that evil doesn't always wear a monster's face. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. Jeffrey Dahmer's story feels like something out of a nightmare, except every detail was real. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer lured men to his apartment in Milwaukee with promises of money, photos, or company. What happened after the door closed became one of the darkest chapters in U.S. crime history. Police once visited his apartment and even returned a terrified victim, believing Dahmer's calm explanation that it was a lover's argument. Hours later, that man was dead, and Dahmer was finally caught. Investigators found what no one could comprehend: evidence of cannibalism and gruesome experiments. He spoke about it all in a disturbingly calm tone, almost scientific. Scariest part wasn't only his crimes, but how easily he blended in, walking past neighbors who never imagined the horror behind his door. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. In the Chicago suburbs during the 1970s, John Wayne Gacy was a model citizen. He ran a contracting business, threw neighborhood parties, and even dressed as Pogo the Clown to entertain children. Under his home lay a secret that stunned the nation. When police searched his property in 1978, they discovered the remains of more than 30 young men buried in a crawl space. Gacy had lured them with promises of work or friendship, and turned on them. The revelation that a friendly clown, someone trusted around kids, could also be a murderer destroyed America's sense of safety. He became a living contradiction, laughter and death painted with the same face. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. Bind, torture, kill. That was the name Dennis Rader chose for himself. From 1974 to 1991, the BTK killer terrorized Kansas. He broke into homes, stalked his victims for weeks, and left behind cryptic letters describing his crimes in chilling detail. Rader seemed to vanish for decades. Then in 2004, he started sending taunting messages again, this time using a floppy disk. He asked police if the disk could be traced. They said no, it could. Metadata on the file led directly to his church computer. Rader was arrested soon after, revealing he'd been a family man, church president, and city inspector. The monster wasn't hiding in darkness, he was living a perfectly ordinary life right next door. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Los Angeles, city was sweltering, windows open, fans running, an easy target for someone who hunted at night. Richard Ramirez crept through those open windows and unleashed chaos. He didn't follow a pattern. He attacked the young, the old, the rich, and the poor. No one felt safe. His crimes were laced with satanic symbols and random brutality. Media headlines screamed about the Night Stalker. People double-locked doors, slept with lights on, and clutched crucifixes. When Ramirez was finally captured, crowds nearly tore him apart in rage. He smiled, flashing a pentagram carved into his hand. In court, he said, "Hail Satan." To a terrified public, he wasn't human anymore, he was the embodiment of fear itself. Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield. Before horror had icons like Leatherface or Hannibal Lecter, there was Ed Gein, the man who inspired them all. In 1957, police entered his small farmhouse in Wisconsin and made discoveries that defied belief. Furniture made of human remains, masks crafted from skin, fridge holding things that no one should ever see. Gein had killed only 2 confirmed victims, but his obsession with his deceased mother and his grave robbing habits turned him into a legend of horror. Unlike other killers driven by rage or thrill, Gein seemed trapped in a delusion, trying to rebuild his mother from the dead. His story blurred the line between madness and evil, birthing decades of nightmares on film. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. Summer of 1976. New York City felt like it was on fire, not from heat, but from fear. Couples sitting in parked cars were being shot at random by a man who called himself the son of Sam. He left letters mocking the police, claiming a demon-possessed dog commanded him to kill. As the body count rose, the city went into panic mode. Women cut their hair short or dyed it blonde, hoping to avoid matching the killer's victim type. Nightlife that defined New York died almost overnight. David Berkowitz was caught in 1977. He looked ordinary, quiet, almost shy. He later admitted the dog story was fake, but the fear he caused was real. Son of Sam case reminded everyone that terror doesn't always come from monsters in alleys. Sometimes it parks beside you on a quiet street. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. He blended into the crowd like anyone else, quiet, average, forgettable. Gary Ridgway would become one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. In the early 1980s, bodies of young women began appearing along the banks of the Green River near Seattle. Victims were mostly runaways or workers, women whose disappearances didn't make headlines at first. Ridgway knew that. He targeted those whose society overlooked. For years, police had only a nickname, the Green River Killer. When DNA testing improved in the 2000s, the case broke wide open. The evidence pointed to Ridgway, a mild-mannered truck painter with a wife and steady job. He later confessed to killing at least 49 women, though investigators believe the real number may be far higher. In court, he showed almost no emotion. One victim's father told him, "I forgive you." Ridgway broke down crying, maybe the only time he ever showed anything human. Aileen Wuornos, the highway hunter. Her story is unlike any other on this list, because Aileen Wuornos wasn't a monster born in luxury or comfort. She was built by years of pain. Homeless or drifting through Florida highways in the late 1980s, Aileen claimed that every man she killed had tried to assault her. Police called her a serial killer. She called it self-defense. In just a single year, 7 men were found dead, all linked to her .22 caliber pistol. When she was finally caught, Aileen's interviews became infamous, her fury, her unpredictability, and her unfiltered honesty. She became a media fascination, the damsel of death, and the subject of movies, documentaries, and endless debates. Was she a cold-blooded killer, or a broken soul pushed too far? In her final words before execution, she said, "I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus." No one's ever forgotten that line. And Albert Fish, the boogeyman. If evil had a face in the early 1900s, it might have been Albert Fish. He was small, gray-haired, polite, and completely depraved. Fish's crimes are among the most disturbing ever documented, not because of numbers, but because of his motives. He targeted children and claimed he was guided by voices from God. In one of the most chilling moments in American crime, Fish sent a detailed letter to the family of one of his victims, describing everything he'd done. That letter finally led police to him. When asked why he did it, he calmly said, "I never really thought of it as wrong." He became a living symbol of madness, proof that sometimes the most unassuming people can hold the darkest thoughts imaginable. The Zodiac Killer, the Code of Death. Few killers have haunted the American imagination like the Zodiac. Between 1968 and 1969, a mysterious figure terrorized Northern California, attacking couples, calling police, and sending coded letters to newspapers. He claimed responsibility for at least 5 murders, but hinted at dozens more. His cryptic messages, filled with strange symbols and taunting phrases like, "I like killing people because it's so much fun," left investigators baffled. What made the Zodiac unforgettable wasn't just the crimes, it was the arrogance. He turned murder into a game, daring the world to catch him. Decades later, despite new DNA testing, handwriting analysis, and countless theories, the Zodiac Killer's identity remains a mystery. He might have died quietly, or could still be alive, reading every new theory about himself online. H. Holmes, the Murder Castle. Long before serial killers became a media obsession, there was H. Holmes, America's first. During the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, Holmes opened a massive building that became known as the Murder Castle. It looked like a normal hotel from the outside. Inside, it was a labyrinth of hidden rooms, trapdoors, secret chutes, and soundproof chambers. He lured guests and employees inside, only for them to vanish without a trace. By the time authorities caught him, Holmes confessed to killing 27 people, though historians believe the number could be much higher. He told reporters, "I was born with the devil in me," line that still sends chills down history's spine. Holmes wasn't just a killer, he was a blueprint for every fictional madman that followed. Samuel Little, the forgotten killer. For years, his crimes went unnoticed. He was arrested multiple times, drifted from state to state, and vanished into the cracks of the system. Only in 2012 did DNA evidence finally reveal who Samuel Little really was, the most prolific serial killer in American history. He confessed to killing over 90 women, many of whom were never even reported missing. He remembered each one's face and drew their portraits for investigators, trying to help identify them. Unlike others who killed for fame or thrill, Little's crimes were silent. He chose victims society had already ignored, poor, addicted, or marginalized. His story exposed a grim truth. The system failed those women long before he found them. Charles Manson, the puppet master. Charles Manson never killed anyone with his own hands, but he didn't have to. His words were weapons. In the late 1960s, Manson formed a family of young followers who saw him as a prophet. He preached about an upcoming race war, twisted ideas of the Bible, and the power of chaos. In 1969, his followers carried out a series of murders in Los Angeles, including the brutal killing of actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant. When the news broke, it shattered the illusion of peace and love that defined the late 60s. Manson grinned in court, carving an X into his forehead, declaring declaring the system a lie. He turned manipulation into murder, proving that sometimes the deadliest weapon is persuasion. Jack Unterweger, the killer who fooled the world. This one feels almost like a movie. Jack Unterweger was an Austrian writer and journalist who built a reputation as a reformed ex-convict. After serving time for murder, he was released and became a celebrity, writing books, appearing on talk shows, and covering stories about women's safety. Behind the fame, he was killing again. Every city he visited, Vienna, Los Angeles, Prague, saw women disappear in the same gruesome pattern. He was finally caught in 1992, convicted of multiple murders, and took his own life the night he was sentenced. Unterweger's story became a chilling lesson. Even fame and intellect can hide pure evil. And each of these names, Bundy, Dahmer, Manson, Wuornos, Zodiac, has become part of American mythology. Not because we admire them, but because we're still trying to understand them. Why do some people become obsessed with the darkness? Why do others get pulled into their orbit? And why, no matter how many times we hear these stories, we keep coming back to them? Maybe it's not fascination. Maybe it's a warning. Because every killer on this list looked ordinary once. They smiled, they worked, they lived among us. Evil doesn't always wear a mask, sometimes it just wears a friendly face. So next time you pass someone on the street and you feel that small, unexplainable chill, maybe, just maybe, your instincts are trying to tell you something. Thanks for watching. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to like, share, and follow for more true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of the human mind. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep your lights on.